Um, this video has more slides than usual, and there's a lot of information on a lot of the slides. So I'm going to move quickly and encouraging you to pause the video, read through the slides, or have the PowerPoint presentation handy so that you can look at it that way. And jot down any notes that you have, jot down any questions, and bring those with you next time. All right, so eukaryotic cell structures. Um, we and plants and fungi are made of eukaryotic cells. These are the larger, more complex cells of the two types, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. And the cells are basically divided into two regions: the nucleus, which is often the largest organelle in the cell, and the cytoplasm, which is outside of the nucleus and within the boundaries of the cell set by the plasma membrane, the cell membrane. So plant cells and animal cells are mostly the same. We have an unbelievable amount in common with plant cells. So next time you're on a hike or walking through the forest, say hi to your cousins all around you there. The big difference between plant cells and animal cells: plant cells have a cell wall. They have chloroplasts, which is where the process of photosynthesis takes place. And they often have a large central vacuole, which is just a membrane bag in the middle of the cell. And in lots of plant cells, it's the biggest organelle in the cell, just a big bag of water, sort of. And we have vacuoles or vesicles, these small little membrane bags, bubbles in our cells, lots and lots of them. It's an important part of the functioning of cells to have these little sort of carrier compartments, these vesicles in the cell. But plant cells have this big vacuole, and they have vesicles too, the way animal cells do. Animal cells, all the same stuff as the plant cells, just a few things that we don't have, like the cell wall and the chloroplasts. Nucleus, I'm sure you are familiar, is the control center of the cell, sort of the brain of the cell. That's where the chromosomes are, and the chromosomes contain the DNA that is the instructions for how to be that kind of a cell, that kind of an organism. The nucleus has an interesting structure that you should know a little bit about. The nuclear envelope, or the nuclear membrane, is actually a double membrane. Now, regular plasma membranes, cell membranes, are a double layer of lipids, creating a barrier. But the nuclear membrane is a double membrane layer, a double layer of lipids. And the nuclear membrane has relatively large openings in it called nuclear pores, but these are lined with some complex proteins that do a pretty good job of screening the substances that might enter or leave the nucleus. And then the nucleolus, which is a dark area that's often visible under the microscope. The nucleolus is where ribosomes get made. And as we will find out, ribosomes are the organelles where proteins are made out in the cytoplasm. And there it is, the ribosomes. These are tiny organelles. They are made up of proteins and RNA molecules. And the ribosomes exist in two places in the cell. They dot the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and that dotting of ribosomes throughout the rough ER is the reason it looks rough under the microscope, because all the ribosomes embedded in that membrane there. And there are also ribosomes that exist free, sort of floating in the cytoplasm. Ribosomes are where proteins are made. Here's the rough ER showing the ribosomes and bringing up for the first time this term endomembrane system. Eukaryotic cells have these membrane-bound organelles with a membrane around them that are important for lots of the functioning of the cell. And there's a connection between the nuclear envelope, the endoplasmic reticulum, both the rough endoplasmic reticulum and the smooth, and the Golgi and the vesicles that are all in a cell. So collectively, all of those are called the endomembrane system, and we'll see some more about that in a minute. This is a good slide to pause on right here, and it shows what happens when a substance is made on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It could be a protein that's synthesized by the ribosomes that are there, and often that protein will be packaged up into a little bubble of membrane that comes off of the rough ER, and that will fuse with the Golgi, and the contents will enter the Golgi apparatus, and their proteins that are made in the rough ER are often processed and adjusted. They have things added to them or sections of them cut off to create the final finished protein from the sort of raw materials made in the rough ER. And then when those products are ready for their function, whether that be working inside of that cell, or in the case of a multicellular organism, those products may be secreted out to be used in other parts of the body. In either case, they get packaged up into one of these little bubbles of membrane that come right from the membrane that makes up the Golgi, and they sort of pinch off of there, and they can go to their final destination. There's that large central vacuole that I mentioned before for plant cells. Mitochondria are really important, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later when we learn about cellular respiration, but these are the places where food molecules are broken down, and the energy from those food molecules is converted into a type of chemical energy that is more useful for the cell. Again, we're going to talk about that in some detail later on, but mitochondria is sort of the powerhouse of the cell, the power plant where useful energy is made from raw materials energy. In the same way you might have a power plant that burns natural gas or coal, or maybe uses nuclear energy. Those are sources of energy, but you can't plug your refrigerator into them. And the cells need a useful source of energy, and mitochondria are responsible for making that. Chloroplasts in the plant cells, that's where photosynthesis takes place. And again, we will look at photosynthesis and cellular respiration in more detail pretty soon. If you got the PowerPoint presentation downloaded, or if you haven't, I recommend that you do it and click on this link where it says molecular motors and watch the video of how this works. It's pretty crazy cool. The cytoskeleton is a network of proteins, and there are two major categories of proteins. There are others, but two major categories of proteins called microfilaments and microtubules. And the picture there shows some motor proteins walking along a microtubule and carrying little vesicles. So maybe this is one of those vesicles that pinched off of the Golgi apparatus, and maybe this vesicle is supposed to go to another part of the cell where those products uh, that were made in the rough ER and processed in the Golgi are going to reach their final destination. Cytoskeleton is important for lots of functions, for maintaining the shape of the cell, for moving substances around inside of the cell, for moving a cell if it's that kind of a cell that needs to move. Cytoskeleton, collectively, these different types of proteins, very important. This is showing a little bit more of the cytoskeleton with some microtubules and microfilaments, and those proteins often exist in a pretty dense network just below the cell membrane to sort of help maintain the shape of the cell, since the cell membrane is the boundary, right? Centrioles are sort of related to the cytoskeleton because they help organize some of those cytoskeletal components, specifically the microtubules. They help organize those microtubules in moving around the chromosomes when cells are dividing. A couple of other links there that you may want to click on if you have the PowerPoint presentation. And a sort of cute little meme that I found. Take a look at this when you're done and see how many of the sort of biologist inside jokes you can get from looking at this organelle meme. That's it for this video. We'll see you all soon.